Hi, hello, welcome to Vital Biology. This is Padma. In this video, we will focus on transport of carbon dioxide. As in a previous class, we have discussed transport of oxygen. That is, once the oxygen diffused into the blood, yes, that oxygen is carried up to the tissues. There, that oxygen is utilized and as a result of catabolic reactions. Okay, as a result of catabolic reactions, the CO2 is released into the blood. Now this CO2, it should transport up to the alveoli so that there again it can diffuse into the alveolus and from there it can release outside. For this entire process, definitely there is a need of transport of carbon dioxide. And that transport of carbon dioxide generally occurs in three different forms. Okay, in three different forms, in which the first one is the carbon dioxide can transported in dissolved state. Okay, but how much of this carbon dioxide can be transported in a dissolved state means about 7%. Okay, only 7% of the carbon dioxide can be dissolved in plasma, and in that dissolved state it can reach up to the lungs. And one more form is the carbamino compounds. Okay, carbamino compound. That means some amount of the carbon dioxide can bind with the haemoglobin which is there in the RBC and form one of a compound called as the carbamino compound. And that is about 20 to 25% can be transported in that particular form. Then as a bicarbonates, okay, as a bicarbonates form, 70% of the carbon dioxide can be reaches to the lungs. So the majority of the carbon dioxide reached to the lungs by one of a form, that is of a bicarbonates form. So the highest is in the bicarbonate form. Next to that is the carbamino compound form, and the last, that is of 7%, that is of the dissolved state. So now we will study how in each and every form how the carbon dioxide actually reaches to the lungs. So the first one, that is in a dissolved state. So here you can see that as previously also we have discussed that in our blood we have one of a fluid part, and that fluid part is nothing but the plasma. Okay, the fluid part of the blood is called as the plasma. So now as it has to dissolve, so yes, it dissolves in one of a fluid part of the blood, that is the plasma. So in this plasma, 7% of the carbon dioxide dissolves. Dissolves means yes, easily it can bind with the water. So here you can see carbon dioxide binds with water and forms H2CO3. Okay, H2CO3. That is carbonic acid. Okay, H2CO3 is a carbonic acid. So this is how the 7% of the carbon dioxide moves up to the lungs in this dissolved state. The second form of transport is the carbamino compounds. Okay, carbamino compounds. So that is about 20 to 25%. So what is this carbamino compound? We will see. See here. Inside the RBC, the hemoglobin, which is constitute one of a amine group, that is the NH2 group, to that amine group, the carbon dioxide will bind and form one of a compound that is called as the carbamino compound or a carbamino hemoglobin. Okay, see once again, hemoglobin constitute one of a amine group in its structure. To that amine group, the carbon dioxide will bind and form carbamino hemoglobin. Okay, so if you will see HB, here it indicates the hemoglobin in which NHCOO minus, so that is carbamino hemoglobin formula, and it also forms hydrogen ions. Okay, hydrogen ions. So in this carbamino hemoglobin form, about 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is like reaches to the lungs. The next one is in the form of bicarbonates. Okay, about 70%. That's what we said. The major portion of the carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonates. So what is that bicarbonate? How it will form? We will see. So carbon dioxide binds with water and it forms carbonic acid. that is H2CO3. And this H2CO3 again dissociates into bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions. See, carbon dioxide binds with water and forms carbonic acid. That is H2CO3 is the carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid further dissociates into bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions. Okay, so like this. So here bicarbonate means HCO3 minus, whereas the hydrogen that is of the H plus. If you observe on both these arrows, we have mentioned one of the enzyme. So that is of carbonic anhydrase. Okay, carbonic anhydrase. So in these particular reactions, if these reactions has to occur, yes, definitely they need this particular enzyme that is of the carbonic anhydrase. And the specific nature of this carbonic anhydrase enzyme is the concentration levels of this particular enzyme is very high, that is in the RBC. Whereas in case of plasma, this particular enzyme will be present, but the concentrations are very less. Minute levels of the enzyme we can observe in the plasma. So this is a very important one. Okay. So once again, see, for the bicarbonate formation, it depends on one of an enzyme that is of carbonic anhydrase. And this enzyme is available more in RBC, but very minute levels in the case of the plasma. So in this diagram, we are representing one half, that is the region of the tissues, and another half, that is the region of the lungs. And as already we know that near the tissues, the partial pressure of oxygen is less. As oxygen already utilized by the cells, that's why oxygen is less. Whereas as a result of those catabolic reactions, carbon dioxide is released into the tissues. That is why the partial pressure of CO2 is more. So here you can see that from the tissues, when that carbon dioxide is released, it dissolves in the plasma. Okay, dissolves in the plasma. Next, it combines with the amine group of the hemoglobin, and as a carbamino hemoglobin, it transports up to the lungs. Whereas the third form which we said that carbon dioxide bind with water to form this is of carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid further dissociate to form bicarbonate ions and the hydrogen ions. Okay. So whereas these hydrogen ions, if you observe carefully, whatever the oxyhemoglobin is present are reached to the tissues. Now to that hemoglobin, these hydrogen ions will go and bind. As a result, it results in dissociation of the oxyhemoglobin. Okay. So once again, see, this one already you know. Carbon dioxide binding with water results in formation of carbonic acid, which further dissociates to bicarbonate ions and the hydrogen ions. Okay. Now, what happened to these hydrogen ions is, these hydrogen ions will go and bind to the hemoglobin of the oxyhemoglobin compound. Okay. As a result, the oxyhemoglobin dissociates and releases the oxygen so that the oxygen can be supplied to the tissues. And what happened to these bicarbonate ions? So these bicarbonate ions are actually released into the plasma. From the RBC, these bicarbonate ions are released into the plasma. Okay. So this is how this entire process occurs. That is how the transport of CO2 takes place. Okay. Coming towards the lungs. In the lungs, the same reactions will occur in a reverse direction, because as like that of the transport of oxygen, the transport of CO2, all the reactions are reversible reaction. That means in whatever the direction actually these reactions are occurred, in a reversible manner they can again break down and results in a formation of the CO2. Means here you can see the first one, whatever the dissolved state of the carbon dioxide is present, yes, now it enters into the alveolar region. Next, whatever the hemoglobin, it bound to the hemoglobin, okay, carbamino hemoglobin compound, that will dissociating and this carbon dioxide again released into the lungs. The same way, the bicarbonate ions which are present in the plasma, now see here, again they'll move back into the RBC. Okay, as we told, these bicarbonate ions moved into the plasma. Now again they are coming back into the RBC and they'll bound to these hydrogen ions. So from where these hydrogen ions came means, as previously we have discussed here, these hydrogen actually bound to the hemoglobin. Okay, actually one of a histidine molecule, as the hemoglobin consists of the more amount of the histidine. To that histidine, actually this hydrogen will bind. But when that carbon dioxide reaches to the lungs, there the conditions got reversed. As a result of that, from that histidine molecules of the hemoglobin, that hydrogen will released back, again binds to this bicarbonate ions so that it can form a carbonic acid first. That carbonic acid further dissociates to form water and carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide again reaches to the alveolus, that is into the lungs. So here whatever the reactions which are helps in transport of the CO2 from the cells up to the lungs, when it reached to the lungs, that is once the carbon dioxide reached to the lungs, all these reactions occurred in a reverse direction and all of these reactions results in release of CO2. So that CO2 will enter into the alveolus of the lungs and from there it releases outside. Okay, so this is how the transport of CO2 occurs. So the majority, that is in the form of these bicarbonate ions, that is about 70%. And with the hemoglobin as a carbamino hemoglobin compound, about like 20 to 25% can be transported. And very least amounts of the carbon dioxide, that is about the 7% in a dissolved state. Okay, so this is the way how the transport of CO2 occurs. So in this diagram, this red color we are representing that as the RBC and outside of that red color part is we are indicating as a plasma. Okay, during the transportation of the CO2, as we told that the bicarbonate ions which are formed, actually they move into the plasma. Okay, they move into the plasma. So once this negative charge, when it will enter into the plasma, to maintain that ionic balance inside the RBC and outside the RBC, the chloride ions, so here you can see the chloride ions, they will move into the RBC. Okay, like in exchange, bicarbonate ions move into the plasma and in turn the chloride ions from the plasma, they will move into the RBC. Okay, so actually this exchange occurs near the tissue level. And another one more also exchange occurs, that is in the lungs level. But now the bicarbonate ions which are moved outside, they will come inside and once these bicarbonate ions return to the RBC, from there the chlorides will return to the plasma. See here, this is the way how the exchange of ions actually occurs. Bicarbonate ions and the chloride ions. So this exchange helps in maintaining of the ionic balance. Okay, so once it reaches to the lungs, yes, again they are going back to their original positions. So this movement of the chloride ions, that is from plasma to RBC and again from RBC to plasma. So this shifting of chloride ions is actually called as chloride shift or otherwise Hamburger's phenomena. Okay, so here this is called as chloride shift. Okay, or otherwise Hamburger's phenomena. So this is how the transport of carbon dioxide actually occurs. And the main important thing is, as a note here we can say that every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood, okay, every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers about approximately 4 ml of carbon dioxide in the alveolar air. Okay, in the alveolar air. 100 ml of deoxygenated blood actually delivers 4 ml of CO2, that is into the alveoli. Okay, as we have discussed the same way in the transport of oxygen, as every 100 ml of the oxygenated blood actually delivers 5 ml of the oxygen to the tissues. The same way here, every 100 ml of the deoxygenated blood delivers 4 ml of carbon dioxide to the alveoli. Okay, so this is a very, very important point. And then we have to also focus that, so in tissues, as we said, the carbon dioxide levels are more. The carbon dioxide levels are more when compared with the oxygen, as oxygen is already utilized by the cells and carbon dioxide released. So from where do this carbon dioxide is released means as a result of these catabolic reactions. Okay, they clearly told because of the catabolic reactions. Catabolism means breakdown of the food material. As we have discussed, the breakdown of like glucose or a food molecule results in release of carbon dioxide as a waste, as a respiratory waste. So that carbon dioxide is, this is the one. That's why we said carbon dioxide is released or its concentrations are more near the tissues because that carbon dioxide is released as a result of catabolic reactions. Okay, so this is the one more important point. And also the same way, near the tissues, the carbon dioxide concentration is, near the tissues, the carbon dioxide concentration is more, whereas the oxygen concentration is less. Whereas near the alveolus, the partial pressure of the oxygen is more, whereas the partial pressure of CO2 is less.